right?
Uh-huh.
How long is your session, Ryan?
I think we'll go about an hour.
Perfect, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi,
Hi.
my name is Clovan. I'm also new with CNC. I think I spoke to you sometime in the week regarding that. I have a blue elephant, but when I generate the toolpath, it's giving me an error in Mach 3.
Ryan, I think we lost your audio there.
Hi, can you hear me now?
There we
No,
go.
I can hear.
Yeah,
Oh,
it was
fine.
it was me. I wasn't muted. I muted myself. Thank you. Yeah. So the challenge in that's in a post processor, and we'll have to have a little bit of understanding about the code. I believe I followed up with somebody that had a blue elephant just a couple days ago with some code, but basically what it is in the post processor under tools settings, setting up the post processor. If you're running the Mach 3, it's one of these codes that are in this header footer, or it's probably in the header footer or the tool change that's throwing an error. So if you are at all familiar with G code, or just kind of in general what your machine needs, you could modify and add codes within this window here to be able to modify the post processor. I keep telling myself that I need to do a video, not just on Cabinet Parts Pro post processors, but just, I think that's one of the most probably confusing aspects of owning a CNC. We all hear about this post processor, but there's a lot of people that don't really know or understand what they are. But it's just a way of getting code organized correctly for your machine. So the Mach 3 or whatever post that you are using, there is something in one of these codes that is throwing the alarm that your controller just isn't able to handle.
All right.
But we'll work with you and get it functional.
What?
Yeah.
I guess I'll just have to try and figure it out. But
Yeah, it's a little bit of a trial and error at the beginning, because just to quickly explain, the post processor is I understand quite a bit of the G code, but there are so many different controllers out there. I just don't know what one controller needs as far as what's in the header versus another one. So I kind of have to rely on you or your machine manufacturer to say, hey, this is or this is not allowed. So if you are having an issue with it, you might just send that code off to your machine manufacturer, that G code file, and ask them, can you mark up in this file what is right and what is not right? And then send that to me, and then I'll be able to oh, okay, well, we could just take these out or add those commands in there.
okay, I'll try and get in contact with them and follow back up with you after this.
All right, well, it is 2 o'clock. We have just a couple more people that are joining, so we'll give another few seconds for everyone to get in. Yes, Charles, it does independently create the cutting code for your machine, and we're definitely going to go over that today. It's done very similar if you're familiar with VCarve or Aspire. It works similar to that, other than we don't have to select the vectors that we want to cut. It's all based on the feature that we're cutting. So we'll definitely get into that probably about 30 minutes into today's session. So I think everybody that is going to come in is here. Thank you and welcome everybody that is able to join today. We're going to probably spend about an hour today. We're going to get an overview of how to enter in cabinets and get over to the nesting. Then we'll back up, slow down a little bit, take a look at some of the settings and how the settings work to be able to build a cabinet the way you would like to have them built. We're going to look at nesting, how to hold parts down. Very important. I was asked, you might be on here, asked the other day, how is it that you could hold cabinet parts and cut cabinet parts without a vacuum system? And my only answer to that is you don't. You go and buy a vacuum system, and there are less expensive ways in doing that as well, which we're not going to get into that, but just reach out and do some Googling on vacuum systems or lower priced vacuum systems. We're going to look at how to use material. That was already a question we had while we were waiting to get started. Going to look at toolpathing within the part nester, and then we're going to look at what is yet to come. So what we're seeing today is, over the last year, we've revamped and did a lot of updating to the nesting side of it and how the nesting in toolpathing works. A few months ago, we started on recreating a new version of the data entry. So we'll see a little bit of that. All right, so I am, I think have everybody muted. Feel free to unmute yourself and ask the question if you see something that you want to do, or use the chat window. I'm okay with being interrupted. And if we get interrupted too many times, I might just say, let's hold off to the end. But let's get started. So Cabinet Parts Pro is a way to quickly get cabinet parts or a list of cabinet sizes over to your CNC. And the quickest way to do that is just opening up Cabinet Parts Pro. You enter in what type of cabinet it is. There's a few types. Wall, base are typically the most used. And then you just enter in the height, width, and the depth of the cabinet. We'll add to that cabinet to our cabinet list. And it builds up a list of cabinets. So we're able to enter in a different size and continue entering in cabinets and different types of cabinet components as you go. And once you get the list completely built and ready to see how many sheets it's going to take or go to your CNC machine, we're going to click Calculate Parts and Nest. It opens up, and it does take a few seconds to create the layout and make them visible for us, but it is working here. And here we are. Right now it's saying it's going to take a total of 8 sheets. And the reason for that, you see we're kind of a smaller sheet here. And that is because in my settings, I have the X and Y set to be 48, 48. We're going to change that to be 96, 48. And we will go in and re-nest those, and it will now lay those out on a 48 by 96 material. Within the nesting, on the toolpaths tab, we have a series of toolpaths that we need to create in here. There's quite a few of them in this list. And each one of these items we'll go through in a little bit more detail. But basically, we're going to set a toolpath for each item that is in this list. Notice for the shelf holes, we could see that they are being selected automatically there. Any backside dados are none on that sheet there, but we could see they are here. And we will individually go through the process of creating a toolpath. We'll simplify it just a little bit as far as so we can get through it a little bit faster. and understand it without having such a large list. But before we get into that, let's back up and take a little bit closer look at how we tell it what type of cabinet we want and how we want that cabinet to be built. So I've clicked new, and we've already seen those cabinets add to the list. Any main changes to the cabinets in the settings are not affected to any cabinets that are already in that list are not going to be affected by any changes made in the main settings. So before you add to the list, you want to make sure that all of the cabinets are being built the way you would like to have them built. So what we have is a box here with a series of checkboxes. And these are all of the combined features that we have selected in our main settings to apply to a specific cabinet type. So when we select wall, we see that the toe kick notch and drawer holes are not checked. But if we select the base cabinet, they automatically become selected. Those are the default settings on how you would like to have your cabinet built. We could go in and change how those options apply in the main settings. So if we go up to Tools Settings or the little gear icon settings and click Cabinet, we have a similar set of checkboxes on the settings here, although there is more checkboxes in the main settings than what we have on the main data entry. And the reason for that is we do not have that option checked for any of the cabinet features. So it's like, okay, you don't want to use it. I'm not going to present it to you on the main screen, and we're just not going to use it. Example here is the drill toe kick holes. That drill toe kick holes is not showing up in the main settings on the data entry page. So I'm going to just go ahead and put a checkbox there to drill toe kick holes. Once I close and now reselect a base cabinet, we see this list has been added. The cut toe kick notch and the drill toe kick holes is now automatically checked. But we only check that for the base cabinet, not for the wall cabinet. So if we select that wall cabinet, notice that that is unchecked. Coming back into the main settings, and we change that from the cabinet type. So I've selected the base cabinet to automatically drill the toe kick holes. If I do not want to have those holes checked by default, just going to uncheck that. Again, close the settings. When we reselect a base cabinet, it is now no longer in our list to be able to select it. So if you want a feature that you don't initially see on the main screen, it may just be that that feature is not selected for any of the cabinet types. So that is a little bit on the types of features that we're able to apply. Each checkbox is, well, most every checkbox has a corresponding button that goes along with it. That button is what is able to set how that feature is applied. One of the easy ones to look at is the drilling of the shelf holes. So the shelf holes, there is a shelf settings button that now brings up a little window that we're able to specify how we want the spacing to be, the depth of hole. Had a lot of questions this past month about how does Cabinet Parts Pro, when you're going to cut it, how does it know how deep to cut? Because on the nesting, there isn't any setting to say, I want to cut it, 3/8 deep or 1/4 inch deep or 3/4 inch deep. The depth of all the features or all the cutting is being driven by these settings here. So the depth of the hole, when we go to toolpath and cut this, it is going to drill down to a depth of 1/2 inch. This is how far we have it set in from the front, in from the back, how far they're up from the top, how far they're down from the the bottom. And we're going to just kind of explore a little bit more on these shelf settings, but first, we're going to enter in a wall cabinet into our list. Do a 30 by 30, 12 deep, and we'll add that to the list. So as I said earlier, it is in this list now. So if I came up into the settings and changed any of these settings, it's not going to be applied to a cabinet that is already in that list. To change a setting or a value of a setting for a cabinet that is already in the list, you would just come down to the list, right click, and select Change Cabinet Settings. It brings up that same form of settings, other than we do not have the option to be able to select what type of cabinet this is. And we don't have that because it knows that we're editing a cabinet. So before we change anything, we're going to first view the nesting of this cabinet so we could see what we're going to change and how the settings affect the drawings. So these are the shelf holes here. And notice that in that setting, we had 6 inches up from the bottom and 6 inches down from the top. That is kind of where these are being indicated, and also the spacing. Right now they're 1.25 inches. Now, let's just say we want them to be spaced every 3 inches. We could do that. We go in and right click, change cabinet settings, do the shelf settings, and just change the whole spacing to 3. And now when we nest these, we should see the whole spacing, instead of being 1.25 inches apart, they'll be every 3 inches. We also have the setting for this cabinet to create a blind dado. That is creating a dado here that is 3/8 of an inch wide. It is creating this rectangle here to be able to cut that out on the inside to make a 3/8 wide depth rabbet to fit into this dado. But we're able to modify all this. If we don't want to have this type of situation, we just want a full 3/4 inch dado, we could change that by going into our settings, the blind full dados. Going to change the width of the dado. Instead of 3/8, we're going to put in 3/4, and we'll re-nest, and hopefully we'll see that dado get a little bit wider. So notice now we do have that dado that is a little bit wider here, and it does cut a little bit bigger on the outside, so the cutter doesn't flow right off the edge there, to allow it to cut on the outside of that a little bit. And we no longer have the rectangle on our top board here, which is the top of the cabinet. And the reason for that is now it knows that that material is 3/4 of an inch. And we have a 3/4 inch wide dado, so it does not need to create that rabbet to fit into that dado. The backs work exactly the same way. We'll modify 2 things this time. I don't want to have this little stop dado here. I want it to go all the way through. I do want a 3/4 inch wide dado, and I want to do and create the same thing for the back, rather than having it cut this rabbet in the back. Going to put a full dado in there on the back of the cabinet as well. So again, going in, right click, change cabinet settings. I'm going to do the blind dados, the stop. I'm going to change that 1.5 to a 0. And then the back dados, let's change that width from 3/8 to 0.75. And I just want to say again, we are only changing the settings for this one particular cabinet. And I'm doing this in a way that going back and forth, like, yes, I like that setting. You know, I'm not going in and changing anything in the main settings until I get it to the point where that's how I want to build my cabinet. Once I get to that point, I'll go back up into the main settings and make those changes to the main settings the same way that I've entered them in here. That way, any newly entered cabinets are going to have those settings. We'll see how that works. All right, so we could see that blind stop dado is no longer there. We have a full dado that's going across the top and the bottoms. The back no longer has that rabbit across the back of it. And we have a 3/4 inch wide dado for the back to fit in. Now it's also inset just a little bit here. With 3/4 inch back, I don't want to have that fully inset. I want that to be flushed out to the back. So again, going to close the nesting and make a change to that back dado and change that inset to be 0. And renest. So we now no longer have the inset, and with that change, all of our other cabinet components and cabinet parts have changed in size to accommodate that different insets, the dados, everything is being changed based on that. Now, it could be the case where we do not want to have a 3/4 inch back. If we have time, I'll explain why you probably do for the cabinet makers out there, but I won't get into that right now. But say if we just want to use 1/4 inch, we are able to specify the material sizes of each of the cabinet components. Again, in the cabinet settings, under material button for our backs, instead of it being 3/4 inch plywood, let's change that to a 0.25 plywood. And now we have a material that is on a different sheet. And that sheet material now is 1/4 inch plywood, and then our standard 3/4 inch plywood here. So it separates the parts that way. We'll also point out there's a question about the side clearance. We just go in, we should have a side clearance on both. That is right now 1/32 of an inch or 0.032 thousandths. That is making, it's a little bit of slop. That's an allowance for that dado. So the dado really isn't exactly 3/4 of an inch. It's going to be 0.78. And it changes in different parameters. So it may be that in some cases it's making the dado rabbit adjustment there versus on the material itself. But that is just to give room for a non-perfect fit, meaning that to allow room for glue or just in general room to put the cabinet together a little bit easier. And we also have and should have the side clearance for the back dados as well. So now if I'm done and I like the way this cabinet is being constructed and I want every single wall cabinet that I have entered in to be set up exactly like this one is, we will, or I will go in and make that changes to the main settings now. So we'll go into the settings, going to select cabinet settings, using the drop-down box to select a wall cabinet, because this is where I want to have those changes made permanently. The backside dado, we did do the inset down to 0. The width is 3/4 of an inch. We also changed the blind full dados to have a stop of 0 and a width also to be 0.75. So now I will select new and add a cabinet, and that newly added cabinet will have the same settings that we just went through and tested. So going back and forth by entering in just one cabinet and making the changes not to the main cabinet list, but to the cabinet that is already added to the list gives you a way to experiment with different settings without having to go in and globally change everything. If you just wanted to kind of test the waters to see if that's the way you want a cabinet to be built, we could do that. Now, to verify that everything is being built the way you expect it to be, we could kind of backplot it in our head a little bit to see if the sizes are coming out exactly how we would expect them to. I'm sorry, I'm reading. Is there no? So no, there is not. In this particular case, we can set that up. So the question that is here is this cabinet top, and kind of shows into what it was going to talk about here next, is when you select any one of these cabinet type or parts, the entire part is getting selected. And then on the info tab, there is a, it tells you a little bit about that part. So with the option right now, the back, and we're going to look at the sizing of this. So this size right now, it also tells us 30 wide length and 12 in the Y. The back of the cabinet, the height, this is the direction in the X, is 28.5 inches. That is exactly what I would expect it to be if I had a back of the cabinet that needed to fit in between the tops and the bottoms. And then the width is 29.25 wide. And that again is that 28.5 inside dimension in the width, plus the depth of the dado of 3/8 on both sides. So we're able to use the parts nester here to see by clicking on the parts to see if we've gotten there. Now, one of the tricky things that we have with putting in the tops and the bottom, the way I've created the cabinet right now, it is possible for us to add a dado across the backside of this top and the bottom for the backs to fit inside of that. Now, try that. Go ahead and do that. So now on the tops and the bottoms, we have a rectangle here that is being drawn for the dado for the backs and the bottoms. And we'll notice that the back of the cabinet, which was 28.5 by 29.25, is now measures 29.25 and 29.25. Now, the one thing that you have to be careful about here, in this case, we could do that. But if we had a situation, and I'll set it up here. To where the width of this dado is not 3/8, but we're going to make it, or 3/4, we're going to make it 3/8. What we've just done to ourselves is created a situation to where it is going to be a two-sided machining. And the reason for that is for it to cut this rabbet to fit inside of this dado, we are going to have this bottom is now the outside of the cabinet is face up. The dado for the back is actually on the inside laying down. So in this case, we would have to choose the option to not cut that dado on the CNC by having that unchecked just as it is. And then after they're cut, take it to a table saw or refixture the part on the machine to cut out the backside. So you could do things like that, and you're able to separate these parts in any way you want. On the nesting, you could choose to toolpath certain features by checking it or not checking it. We're able to set all of that. And that's what we're going to get into right now. Take a look at creating some toolpaths for this and exploring that a little bit. But before we get into the toolpaths, we want to talk about how are we going to hold these parts in place and look at some of the material usage. So right now we're running on the default material, which is 96 by 48 inches. We are also able to set the cut order or the cut direction of where the initial plunge point is into the material and what direction it goes and what parts get cut first. That is very critical to do for anybody that does not have a massive vacuum system. A part like this, most vacuums will be able to hold this sheet down. But in some cases, we get into some smaller parts, we want to change the order. So let me close the nesting and just enter in a base cabinet that's going to create some smaller parts for us. All right, so now most vacuums are going to have a hard time holding down some of these smaller parts here. But it doesn't mean we can't cut them. And we could do that without tabs and without onion skinning if we look at the strategy of how they're going to get cut and what parts are going to get cut first. So we definitely want to cut the smallest parts first. And we're able to see how these parts are cut in the order by clicking a checkbox here on the info tab or cut order. That is going to give us a little circle indicating what parts are going to get cut first. And right now, by default, it cuts and selects them in the order from the smallest parts to the biggest parts. But even that alone, we still might want to change the order and the plunge points of where this happens. So let's start taking a look in the upper right corner here. We're going to cut in a conventional cut path, which is a left to right. That's the way you're going to want to do it 99% of the time, cutting anything on your CNC that is made, that's man-made material. Plywoods, melamines, plastics. Usually 99% of the time, a conventional cut is going to give you the better quality edge. Lumber, natural materials, you will go in a climb direction. So now, if we are running in a conventional cut, that is a left to right. So that is going around the outside of this part in a counterclockwise direction. So if we start on this upper part, upper right here, and think about how we want to cut this out. If it plunges in on this lower left corner, it is going to cut along the bottom side, top side, and around over here. So once it cuts those three sides, the only thing that's holding this part in place is this short side here. We may not want that to happen. It might not be enough material to kind of hold that straight enough. So we're going to click each part in the corner or the quadrant of the corner of that part in the order that we want them to cut. That was a lot of words. So I'm just going to show it and hopefully we'll be able to see what is going on. All right. So I've clicked them in the order that I wanted to have them cut, and they are going to cut. I have to update my version because it's got an older version here, but they will cut in the order that I have selected them. And with that plunge point in the order there. So if we start here, going to go up, over, down, and the final cut, we still have the rest of this sheet that is holding that in place, and it's not going to release from the main part until it makes that final cut through. The same thing here, up, over, down. So even though that's a small part, and that last little cut might kick that part off to the side a little bit, but the chances are it's not going to damage that part. You might just have to take it to the sander or touch it up a little bit. And moving around and moving from cutting all the smaller parts first, moving to the bigger parts. So that is the first thing in material hold down. Now, I'll uncheck that. Another method is to do an onion skinning. An onion skinning is where you're going to cut almost all the way through, cut the whole entire sheet almost all the way through, and then come back and remove that final onion skin. And by that onion skin being left there, there's not a whole lot of force that's being cut. So in some cases, just the weight alone, the weight of the part alone is enough to hold that part in place. And there is a feature within the settings of tools to only onion skin parts of a certain size. And we could see that by going into tools, settings, and have the onion skin height. We're going to say 40 thousandths. That's how much material is going to be left. And we're only going to onion skin parts that are 4,000 or 400 square inches or smaller. So we'll remember that setting is there when we get to the tool pathing section. Hopefully everybody understood that cut order. I am recording, so you can rewatch that. I'll get it posted up, and that's very useful to get that strategy understood for holding smaller parts down with a smaller vacuum system. And like I said, even on a large scale vacuum system, some of these smaller parts are going to be, you're just going to have a hard time holding those down. All right, so now we're going to take a look at some of the tool pathing and how the tool pathing is created straight out of Cabinet Parts Pro. The cutting features that are here on the right side on the toolpath tab are very similar to the features that we have set for that cabinet. So there are the drawer holes. I'm going to select that, and that is these two little holes right here for the drawer slides to be cut. We're going to set that. And I'm getting a message here that this layer is not set up. So it's not set as a template yet. So we have to go through the process of doing that. I want to set that to the same parameters that I have for the shelf holes, hinge holes, and the drawer holes. I'm going to use the same diameter cutter, same speed, same feeds, and everything for that. So that is just kind of flow straight through. The tool diameter is 5 millimeter or 0.197. The depth per pass, I'll talk about that when we get to the cutting toolpath. That's another setting that is hard to explain, and I'll try to explain it. The tool number, that's for your tool changer, what tool that is, ramp distance and lead ins. We'll see that when we come into the final cuts. The RPM, feed rate in the X and Y, the feed rate for the Z, the add to depth, we'll also see what that is, and the V-bit, we're not going to talk about that today. Now for the tool offsets, how is it that we want to cut these holes? Do we want to cut them, drill them, and what is it that we're doing with them? I do want to drill, so I have the option set here to drill. and conventional climb does not matter, then you will select the post processor that best suits your machine, and then click Save as Template. Now, by clicking Save as Template, that is now saved for the next time we use it. We won't have to come through and set anything again unless we want to change it, unless we don't like the way it cut the last time. So when you first set up, you will have to go through each of these items in this list to tell it how we want those toolpaths to be cut. As we select each item in the list, they are automatically selecting the vectors that are associated with that template. So we see the 2 back dados have become selected. And just looking at that, we are cutting, and we would want to cut on the inside of this. So we're offsetting, the tool offset is to the inside. We will use a 3/8 diameter cutter. The step over is used if you're pocketing from the outside, and cutting a bigger rectangle than what that cutter could clear out. In this case, we don't have that issue. So we are also going to set to the tool offsets to the inside. So it's going to offset the geometry of the center of that cutter to the offset to the inside of that vector. And we'll be able to see what that looks like. And it looks like we have all of the templates already set. Click through here and not getting any messages about a toolpath layer not being set. I could come straight down now and click Save Toolpaths. Give it a name and then save. You don't have to click Calculate. Just clicking Save Toolpaths automatically calculates and saves each of our nested sheets to a separate file. So we had 2 sheets. It created a folder, Test1 Toolpaths. And inside of that folder, we will have our 2 G-code files. Then we also, depending on the post processor, you may or may not have this information text file selected. That is a file that gives us a little bit of information about what is on each sheet. We could now focus a little bit on what those toolpaths were doing. So again, we're going to come up and select that backside dado that we had set to offset to the inside. We zoom in on here and we can see that this is the center of that 3/8 cutter that is going to circle around on the inside, and on the cut layer that is being offset to the outside, and that is this toolpath that is here. And there's a couple strategies that we could look at here, and that is the add to depth. So right now, the depth of that final cut through is based on the material thickness that we have set for these parts. So all of these parts are set to be 3/4 of an inch, and these parts are also 3/4. So everything is 3/4 of an inch. If we had the 1/4 inch backs still selected, we would have another sheet, and the total depth of that sheet would be 1/4 inch. Now, when cutting through all the way through, you can't cut exactly the material. You're going to leave it won't go all the way through. Your vacuum compresses the material down a little bit more. So we need to cut just a little bit deeper. And you know your machine a little bit better, and you'll be able to dial this in the more you use it. But I typically cut 10 to 20 thousandths deeper than all the way through the material. So I'm going to add to the depth of 0.02. So that is going to add 20 thousandths to the 0.75 and cut a total depth of 0.77 into the table surface. So it's going to go in 20 thousandths into the table surface. Just going to clear that. And again, you don't have to clear just save toolpaths out again. And the reason why I cleared it is just to recalculate without saving, to allow us to inspect to see what is going on with these parts. So we are getting a representation of where the center of the tool is flowing. We could also rotate this off to the side a little bit and see the different depths of what is going on. So right now, remember, we had the onion skin option set to be 40 thousandths, 0.04. For the cut layer, I do not have the option set to onion skin. So if we want to make a change to a template that we already set up, then select and click on onion skin. And since we're doing that for that cut layer, I want to save that as a template. Now, when I calculate this again, we should see a double line show up right here. That is the two different cutting depths. So it's going to cut down almost all the way, 40 thousandths off of the spoil board, or 40 thousandths for going all the way through. And then this depth here is the final pass to go all the way through. And we will notice that we do not have that double line on our larger parts. And the reason for that is these larger parts are bigger than the 400 square inches that we had set in the tool pathing. So it will only go around and cut the parts, onion skin, these smaller parts first. So it'll cut almost all the way through. Then when it gets done with those smaller parts, it'll come back over and start on those smaller parts again and cutting off to those bigger parts. Hopefully all of that has made sense. Any questions that anybody has up until now? No, so the onion skin, so the question is, I have a question about the onion skin depth, or the add to depth. The add to depth for that cut is only being applied to the final cut and not on the onion skin. The onion skin is always being subtracted from that material thickness up. So it's kind of separate, but together. And I must not have saved my change to the add to depth as a template, because I can see it's reverted back to 0. All right, so now we have some material, processing. One thing that you may see or have noticed on some of the drawings here, there is a green dotted line there. That green dotted line is like waste material that is not a part, but it is also giving us a line there to be able to cut that out if we wanted to. For those that are already cutting cabinet parts, you are using the CNC, you could get fairly large skeleton-like pieces off the machine that are hard to manage. So we have the option to be able to cut scrap in manageable ways. And we can see on this final sheet, we are cutting a large, or have the option to cut this larger circle, where if we didn't have that, this cutting pattern here would be cut out that way. So for scrap, we have the option to be able to specify what is the biggest part in square inches that we would like to have outlined or a line created for. So in the settings right now, any part that is bigger than 150 square inches, it will create this green line for us to be able to create a cutting file to cut that out. And I also have the option checked to draw the scrap. And that is also creates an item in our list that we're able to toolpath separately on how we want that scrap to be cut. So basically right now I have the cut, both of them being set exactly the same way. It does and it will cut all of the cabinet components first, then come back and cut the waste material last. One other option that I did not point out yet before you get into multiple material types is on this cut, we are able to ramp into the material. Right now with the ramp distance set to 0, that means that it's going to go straight over top of the corner, plunge straight down into the material and move along. That's not always the best method. Anytime your machine drills straight down and moves along, there is a very small amount of dwell that it stops when it's changing the direction. If you're cutting with a vacuum system, which you should be cutting cabinet parts, that little bit of a pause before it moves, continues moving, allows it to build up a little bit of heat. So you've got friction and then also poked through that material all the way. That is going to allow a rush of air flowing over this hot bit onto the table. So there's a chance of a fire that way. So you want to have that machine kind of getting up to speed and as fast as it can without building up any heat. So if the continuous motion of your machine, and if you have your RPMs and your feed rates set correctly, the bit should never get hot. Or really shouldn't even get warm. It might be slightly warm, but if you have your feeds and your speeds set up correctly, the only thing that is going to be warm and hot are the chips that are coming off of that machine. So the heat is getting extracted out in the chips there. So to add a ramp, I'm going to move a distance of 1 inch. So that means it is going to start at the top of the material and angle down to its total cut depth over a distance of 1 inch. So I clicked save that as a template and we'll calculate that and we'll kind of rotate the drawing around so we could see what that looks like. There is that angled cut right there. And then we also have the option to do a lead in. Clear this toolpath out. So a lead in right now, that means with that ramp being there, it's going right along the edge of the material. So if you're cutting with a compression cutter, which is a up-down cutter where the first part of that section of that cutter is spiraling up. So if we cut and plunged in along a distance, there's a chance that you're getting some chips and frays along that. So we want to change this to a lead in. So I'm going to change that to 5 degrees, and I'm actually going to make that a -5, and you'll understand why I'm doing that. But actually, we need to do that on the cut layer. We'll save that as a template and calculate to see what we have there. And we can see that that is the ramping in and the lead ins for each part as it is. So it is starting the material on the outside and moving its way in. Certain parts you have to be careful that we went a little too far here. We got a setting, I think, with our depth not being set correctly somewhere here. And it's amazing, these machines. I mean, this would have caused me a problem right here. You see that depth? I missed the decimal point. So you have to be careful with that. So I'm going to change that to a add to depth of 0.03. Actually, I'm going to go 0.02. Save that as a template and calculate that. So when you look at these lead-ins, you do want to make sure that these lead-ins do not intersect with the tool path opposite. Otherwise, if this lead in was coming over here, that means that it is going to hit that other part. Did have a question, can the smaller parts, that's a good strategy as well. Having some of the smaller parts into the middle of the board. Not automatically. There are ways that we could move and shift the parts around. If you right click on a part, you can move that and replace it wherever you want, rearrange them manually. But typically what I like to have is all of my smaller parts set on one edge to where I could cut across the top and work my way down to the bottom. And you could even have vacuum zones set on your table. So if all the small parts are across the upper edge or along one edge and working the other way, as it gets down to past the center mark, you could start shutting off some of your vacuum zones of where those parts have been cut already and keep the stronger vacuum underneath of the other sides and not lose too much vacuum there. So along with that waste, if you end up with material like this part here, we have, that's a fairly large chunk of material that you might want to save for the next job. And we have a way of entering in the size, different size materials to have it use that material first. So if we go into, I don't mean to close it. Go into the tools, settings, and then this button here for scrap material. We want to give that a name. Now, before I just type it in incorrectly, I'm going to select this part, and that name needs to match the same name that is the material, which is also the same name that is found, or a combination that is found in the main settings under material for that part or for those parts. So it's 3/4 plywood. That is where and why it is saying 3/4 plywood here. So I'm just going to, again, select this, not grabbing the space in front of it, going into the tools, settings, scrap material. I'm going to paste that name in here and tell it that I have, one board that is 72 in the X, 48 in the Y. The priority is I want to have this part used first. So I'm going to say a 0. Add that to the material list and say I have another 2 more boards that are 96 inches long by 24 inches. And I'll add that to the list as well. We'll save that part, or save that there. We'll close. And now when we re-nest, it will nest it on those on that material as we entered it in there first. So this board here, it's kind of harder to see, but that is our 72-inch board. And we can see that 72 when you hover your mouse over towards that edge. The lower right, we can see that the X is 72. It used 2 sheets of those. I must have entered in a quantity of 2 there. But that is a way to make usage of your scrap material. Let me close this. It does not keep track of, it doesn't take it out of that list. It's up to you to manually remove it from that list if you no longer have that material in your shelf. So I just did 4 of them this time, so it'll use more material to see how that spans across everything. All right, so it's a total of 8 sheets. There is the couple that were 72 long. There are the sheets that were measuring 96 by 24. And we've used up now all of the scrap that we've had entered into that information. Now we're back to using up our just new material of 9648. And there, again, it's giving us the option to keep track and add that material in. After this job is done, we may add more material to our scrap. So if after this is cut, we used up the material, we can come into the settings, the scrap material. We now have that in that list. For it to build out, you could remove that sheet or just delete all of it altogether. And when we renest, we no longer have any scrap material in our list, so it will just use the 9648 default material. All right, well, that is about the hour that I said I was going to be talking. I'm still here for questions. So Rich, no, unfortunately not with this version, but the newer version is not yet to that point, but it is a possibility that that could be arranged to where we could have one side a little smaller in depth to make an angled front or a different type of corner cabinet in the case, but currently no, but the newer version that will be a possibility. You can make individual parts, well, in a couple ways. You can come in and draw within the parts here themselves. You could enter in a part as an extra cabinet. So let's do here. If I wanted just an extra part, I could specify what part I want to be. If I want a right side, enter in the dimensions of that side. You would add that to the list and nest it. And that is a right side for whatever particular cabinet that I had it set for. The other option that you can do is for more custom pieces, we could enter in cabinets. Change the quantity to this to give us a couple of sheets to see how this works, and make some modifications within an outside CAD/CAM program. So if you have, Vectric software, which is the easiest because it's almost seamless here, where we could go to edit, copy to Vectric, and then open up VCarve Pro or Aspire. Enter in your new job, and then right click and paste. Then those sheets are automatically brought into your Vectric product, and you can make whatever modifications that you want here. Jim, I probably will post this up on YouTube to have it viewed there. And there is a lot of other videos. If you haven't searched yet for Cabinet Parts Pro on YouTube, there are a lot of videos that I have done. And I've had some users posting up some videos as well on how they use it. point out a couple other things that we have the options to do. I do have SketchUp. There are in the 3D warehouse, if you do a search for Cabinet Parts Pro or a search for my name, Ryan Patterson in the warehouse, you will get some cabinets. So you are able to enter in or place cabinets within SketchUp, and then using a extension, which is the CPP export function, which will take that right out of SketchUp, and it might ask you a couple questions because it doesn't know what a filler is. So I'm telling it that it's an extra, and just follow that. And it just automatically throws those cabinets that are in the SketchUp model into the list, and you can nest them from there. So I'm hoping the new version is going to be another couple weeks. Let me I can demonstrate what it looks like. It looks very similar to what we have here, but it is different, same but different. So it works really the same exact way, where we have a series of checkboxes to run and enter in the type of cabinet. There's more cabinet types that are going to be in here and different features, but it basically works exactly the same way. Add it to the list, you calculate and nest, and it lays it out. So for anybody that is interested, I am happy to get you a copy of the newer version. It may already have the features that are suitable for you, and you're welcome to use it. I just don't have all of the features in the new version that the older version have yet. But tools, settings work basically the same way. You have all of the cutting features and a matching button that goes with it that you're able to specify the different values of each one. So I am not using the Paranest program. The Paranest is an option that you probably don't need. The part nester is what comes with Cabinet Parts Pro. Paranest is just a completely separate nesting package that was put together for some specific non-cabinet making situations. There is, let me point out one other thing that was recently put in, and many of you may not even have this version yet. Feel free to go to CabinetPartsPro.com and download the demo version. Your key codes and everything will still function with that if you've purchased Cabinet Parts Pro within the year. But there was a request to know what sheets are what. So I've now added, when we go to File, Save DXF files. So we'll just I'm going to call it Test. So it's going to give us one DXF file for each sheet, but it is also going to give us a picture file of that. So 1, 2, 3 DXFs along with a bitmap that you could kind of make it universal and open it up just to see the picture of the layout of what is provided. So I think Yeah, so labels. There's a couple methods of producing labels. What you just saw on the screen under the toolpaths, it also created a folder with labels. Those labels are well, created within the post processor, but the post processor label style is more for the machines that have the automatic labeling systems that also have the loader unloaders, and that's the reason for the barcode on it for the unloader to know where to stack the parts. But there's also labels found under file print labels that you're able to specify what type of size label that you have there, and you could print them out on just a sheet of labels that way. I apologize, my computer is running extremely slow today. Any other questions?
Hey, Ryan, this is
Yeah.
Steve.
Hi, Steve.
We're going to have a problem when I download my new thing with the post processor we had to get. I had to get with Masso. Remember, we had that problem?
Right.
It went back
No.
to default the first time, and
Yeah, let's
we had a
yeah,
heck of a time trying to figure it out what was wrong with it.
right. Yeah. Give I will let's back that up. Give me a call before you update, and we'll get connected to your computer like we've done, and I'll back that up to where we're not going to mess with that post processor, or we'll give it a different name rather than the default name. We'll name it something else, and it won't change it on you. And it's good to hear from you, Steve. I don't know if you got my text. the other
I've
day.
been away. I've been away.
Okay,
for a
I've been
while. I
worried
just got
about
back
you.
in. Don't worry about me, man. I'm going to be running the machine today, so I'll hope everything works fine.
Yeah,
Had a
good.
lot of stuff to do. I was away for a while, but this new one looks a lot better. When do you think you're going to have doors in there in the new program?
Well, the door. Well, they're sort of here now. I don't know if you saw on the wall cabinet that I had created. Oh, there's the labels. The wall cabinet. Well, actually, that right here where I copied and pasted. The sheet number 4 is creating doors. That's like a separate video that we could do to get that to work.
That's available now, that type of door, that shaker door?
Currently, yes.
Right, well, that's what I got to finish up this. I got shaker doors to do, so
All right.
maybe we can get together. When do you think we get together on that?
Yeah, we could get together sometime this week.
Okay.
So
That's good. Monday?
Monday afternoon could be good.
All right, I'll
Yep,
give you a
give me a
call
call.
Monday afternoon, and then we'll update it, and then we'll save that post processor because we had a lot of problems with it.
Yeah,
Up and down.
we'll do that. Got another question about drawer sides or boxes for ordering. Currently, no, but if you just heard that click, that is my pen opening up to write this down as a feature to put in to the new version, and that is to have and generate a list of drawer boxes. So if you aren't one that builds your own drawer boxes, to where you might outsource the dovetail drawer boxes to where it will generate a list of sizes to print out or to order from. That's a great had Cabinet Parts Pro since 2006, and I think that's the first time I've heard that suggestion. I don't know why I hadn't thought of that earlier. It's a good suggestion. All right, anyone for any other questions?
Ryan, if you got just 1 minute, why would you use 3/4 inch for the backs? That's
Oh,
rather
yeah.
thick.
Yeah, so there is it the flaws or the drawbacks of using 3/4, in my opinion, the only one that I could really take as the argument to not use 3/4 is it does make it a heavier box. But overall, it is going to save the total number of sheets that you have to cut and the time that it takes to cut those. So say an average kitchen is going to take maybe 25 sheets of 3/4 inch plywood. So that means you're going to have to cut 25 sheets. Now, if we use 1/4 inch material in that as well, that means that we're probably not 25 sheets. We're probably going to have maybe 24 sheets of 3/4 and 3 or 4 sheets of 1/4 inch material. So that's a total of 29, 30 sheets there. So you are going to save some money in buying 1/4 inch material because it just costs less. But overall, if you add up the total dollars of the 3/4 plus the extra 1/4 inch, and also add in the extra time that it takes to cut those extra sheets, you end up saving overall using 3/4 inch material or the same material, 5/8 or 3/4 or whatever it is, overall. And you could always just kind of do the math just by entering in some cabinets here and running a couple scenarios to see what it takes and how much what your material usage is, and just do some kind of quick math on it. But I think you'll find overall it's going to save you a little bit of money by doing the 3/4 inch material overall, which not a lot of, when I first say that you're going to save some money using 3/4, not many people believe me at first.
Well, thanks for the insight. That's great.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So you can have the option to, in the cabinet settings, to say that we don't have to cut with no backs. Here it is, the option right here, no back. And you would want to possibly set that option if you are cutting all the other cabinet components on the CNC, but you're just going to use the table saw or panel saw to cut the backs. You would set the option to not have the backs calculated within the parts. The one issue that you would have there is you'd have to calculate the sizing of each one yourself, which if you're a cabinet maker of any length of time, that sizing just kind of happens in your head automatically. And yes, it would still create all of the dados and everything else just as if they were backs. All right, well, if you don't have Cabinet Parts Pro yet, it's a little bit challenging to get started with it when you first download it and use it. You found me either on the website or somehow you found my information to join today. Use the my email. My phone number is also on the website. If it's quick questions, just give me a call. I'll help you out. If we have to do some longer training sessions, we could figure out figure that out. Yeah, I'm here to help and try to get you excited to use it. So face frame cabinets, no. I'm going to say that's a yes/no question or answer. It is a box maker. So if you're doing a face frame cabinet that is basically just a box with a face on that, then you could use Cabinet Parts Pro to create the box. You will have to remember that a 30-inch wide cabinet on a face frame may not be, the box isn't going to be 30, it might be 28.5 to allow a scribe for that face framing. But that is the reason for these two settings as well as for face frames. So you could add, a recess to the top and the bottom to where the bottom of the cabinet, after it's assembled and you have your face frame attached to it, it will raise that bottom up to have the bottom flush with the frame of the cabinet. All right, sounds like, and it seems like the questions have come to a pause or a slowdown. So thank you all for joining us today. Again, if you have any follow-up questions, just shoot me an email, give me a call, and we'll do our best to get you started.
Hey, thanks, Ryan.
Yep,
Have a
you're
good
welcome.
day.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Ryan. I'll be calling you.
All right.
Hey,
Have a
Ryan.
nice weekend.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. Yeah, was that
Hey, Ryan.
Charles? Yep.
Yeah, I was just sending a message to Cabinets Pro. Wasn't sure if that was the best way to get a hold of you.
Yeah, that would work. My Gmail account seems to be the one that gets emails from everybody. The info at Cabinet Parts Pro doesn't always it tends to block some people. My Gmail account email is rplp@gmail.com.
rplp@gmail.com.
I'm sorry, 427. It's rplp427@gmail.com. I'm typing it into the chat, so you will be able to see what that is. 427. Yes, there it is.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.